Okay, you're live.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the Las Cruces Economic Recovery Ad Hoc Board. This meeting is the first one that was created by the special meeting that City Council held on May 22nd, in which it created a resolution that was passed, Resolution 20-161, creating a resolution to establish the Las Cruces Economic Recovery Ad Hoc Board. We have published an agenda that was shared via email for all of you. And the first thing is to call to order for this meeting. The second thing is if there's any conflict of interest with regards to any of the board members to the published agenda. Hearing none, we'll continue to the next point, which is number 3, the acceptance of the agenda as presented.
Francisco, this is Christina Martinez. Because we don't have yet a chair, would it be okay for us to move the acceptance of the agenda after we have a chair?
Okay, we can certainly do that. So then the first thing, perhaps, Dave, and this might be a good point for discussion here, is that we don't have points for approval either because it's the first meeting. Perhaps the next thing is maybe we can introduce ourselves, and then from there we can start to know who's here, what is it that the role that they're playing, what is the industry in which they're performing from, and get to know who's part of this board as a first stage. So shall we start with Mr. Cohen?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
Certainly, Mr. Cohen. Can you just introduce yourself? Tell us, of course, your name, the industry that you're representing. Tell me, well, for all the board members so that they get to know you. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is we get to know everyone rather than voting someone as the chairman first. So we get to know who's here before we get to that round.
Sure. My name is Doug Cowan. I represent the nonprofit category for business in Las Cruces. I pastor the Cornerstone Baptist Church, and I'm the chief administrator for Cornerstone Christian Academy in Las Cruces.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Cowan. Michael Harris.
There's two mutes. My name is Michael Harris. I represent District 6, and I'm a small business owner. I own a technology consulting company. We do everything from software development to custom electronics for all kinds of industries. And that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michael. Ms. Jolene Martinez.
Hi, my name is Jolene Martinez. I'm a licensed clinical social worker serving Southern New Mexico. I'm the clinical director for Families and Youth Incorporated. We have services that span all across the county and throughout the region. I'm also an adjunct faculty at New Mexico State University in the area of community organizations. And so I'm in this situation, I'm representing Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you, Ms. Jolene. Ms. Sharon Thomas.
Good morning. I'm a former city councilor and mayor pro tem. I'm also a former small business owner. My family owned the Red Mountain Cafe, and I currently work with the South Central Regional Transit District, and I sit on the Workforce Solutions Board.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you very much. Mr. Scally.
My name is Christopher Shaljo. I am a small business owner here in Las Cruces. I own Salud de Mesilla, which is a restaurant. And I was asked to join this ad hoc board by Councilor Bencomo as well. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaljo. Debbie Moore.
Good morning, Debbie Moore, President CEO of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. I am a member of the statewide workforce board, and I'm on this committee as chair of Las Cruces Opens Recovery Task Force. We have with about 16 organizations within the city and the county.
Thank you, Debbie. Griselda?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Christina Martinez. I'm the Economic Development Director, under which this committee falls. And thank you for being interested in serving in this committee and helping us in this very important task to move forward.
Thank you, Griselda. And I think that just leaves to me. My name is Francisco Payares. I'm the Deputy Director of Economic Development for the City of Las Cruces as well. With that, let's move to the next point in the agenda, which we have published it as let's pick a chair. So what we were, Griselda and I were mentioning is that it has been helpful, at least for us, that we pick a chair and a vice chair, just in case there is someone that doesn't show up or that the chair cannot make it for one of these meetings. And we understand that a lot of people are very busy, especially now. So it might be a good idea to pick a chair as well as a vice chair to go with this. So with that, I'll leave it to you, and in case there's any discussions or in case there's any proposals for anyone that wants to be the chair of this committee.
At this point, we're receiving any self-nominations or somebody who would recommend one of the other members in the discussion. Who's the brave one to step up as the chair?
Griselda, I'll be brave unless Chris, I see you moving forward.
I will self-nominate myself if no one else wants to step up to the plate. I have no issue with that.
Yeah, Griselda, I could be his co-chair.
Perfect. Thank you both.
We got this, Debbie.
Yeah, we got this.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair, the next point in the agenda that we have provided for you is the purpose of the board. So we kind of move that number 3 portion right there. So as I was mentioning to you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Vice Chair, let me share my screen really quick to what the, let me see if I can, let me know if you can see my screen, okay? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it, or I can see it at least.
Excellent. So the important part that I wanted to mention from here is this is the resolution from which this board was created, is that the purpose of this board, of the Las Cruces Economic Recovery Board, is to make specific recommendations to the mayor and city council on the strategies for gradually reopening the Las Cruces economy affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in a smart, safe, and effective manner that fits the needs of Las Cruces, in alignment with the direction of the New Mexico Economic Recovery Council, which is the one that happens in the state. And this committee shall be dissolved upon full reopening of the economy in Las Cruces. So with that said, that being the main purpose of this board, I wanted to ask you as to, is there any discussion with regards to this?
You were kind of breaking up towards like halfway through where you were talking about that.
Not a problem. So the purpose is to gradually reopen the economy of Las Cruces affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in a smart, safe, and effective manner that fits the needs of Las Cruces and in alignment with the direction of the New Mexico Economic Recovery Council. And this board shall be dissolved upon the full reopening of the Las Cruces economy. I'm not sure if that explains it, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Excellent. Mr. Chair, with that in mind, the next point that I have is on the selection for the frequency of the meetings.
Wonderful. Cool. Does anyone have any recommendations on the frequency of these meetings? And or Francisco, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but what is the commitment to this board? How when are we on a time limit of when we're supposed to be meeting and delivering recommendations, or is this just a standing committee for a while?
Mr. Chair, as far as I know, this board was created and it shall be dissolved because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So once the full economy in Las Cruces is reopened, the purpose of the board is to be dissolved. However, the main point of the creation of the board is to have Las Cruces specific recommendations to how to open the economy in Las Cruces. Of course, going in alignment with what the state has already provided, but in specific recommendations that might be more appropriate for the city.
Just to add to that, this is Christina Martinez. There is no specific time constraint. However, one of the items that City Council has brought during the discussion of the creation of this committee is to have input from you all as soon as possible so they can make decisions based on that input. So no specific timeline, just that for your consideration, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful, thank you for that clarification. Is there any recommendation from the board as to how frequently we should meet with any kind of timeline in mind?
I have a question, Chris, before we do that. Is our focus primarily here just on how to reopen in face of the virus, or are we also looking at what the economic development is going to look like? We know the new normal and broader than just looking at what has to do with the health issues.
It's a great question.
Mr. Chair, and Ms. Thomas, the purpose as it was established, it's for the gradual reopening of the Las Cruces economy because affected by the virus. Now, in the portions in which I think you're addressing, it might fit more under in a smart, safe, and effective manner that fits Las Cruces. So there might be elements associated only to our city that perhaps we or the state is not looking at whenever they're making their recommendations. So that is specifically the purpose of the Economic Recovery Board.
I'm asking because the council had a presentation on that flash economic, looking at this, what was going on, and there have been some other entities that have been sending things around, Schumann and Padilla. And so I'm seeing responses to reopening that go all the way from just how the business is supposed to keep everything sanitized and all those sorts of things, all the way up to, you know, how are we going to bring back a vibrant economy with, you know, better jobs, better trained workers, those sorts of things.
May I? This is Christina Martinez again. Sherry, the purpose of this committee is, as Francisco mentioned, is up to us being fully reopened. The longer term items that you're discussing would be more appropriate to be discussed in a different committee, such as the Economic Development PRC. So the purpose of this board, it's more specific to the first items that you mentioned and making sure that all the perspectives on this reopening are being considered. So it's a very similar approach to the state Economic Recovery Committee, except that we're considering the specific items in Las Cruces and with a broader perspective, such as non-for-profits, that was not an item included in the state committee. I hope that clarifies your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
I also see that Doug had his hand as well. Doug?
Yeah, I'm thinking our economy and the way that this situation is very fluid. I think the frequency of the meetings needs to be I would think at least a weekly type meeting, simply because we need to get the economy moving, and this thing is so fluid. It seems to me that on a daily basis, things slightly change, and well, we could certainly help some of these businesses get moving a little quicker than sitting back waiting a month.
I agree with you. And then Debbie, you had your hand raised as well.
I did. I was also Debbie Moore, Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. I was also going to say, I think certainly the longest would be every other week, but weekly, it is a fluid deal that we've been dealing with since March. And I think that the weekly would be, the challenge with weekly is if we have tasks to do, that week may not give a time to get things done. But it's certainly, I think, informational would be good to meet on a weekly basis.
Agreed. Thank you. Do I hear a motion then to go ahead and do weekly meetings?
This is Debbie Moore, Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. I move to meet weekly.
This is Doug Cowan. I second.
Okay, any discussion on the meeting weekly? Hearing none, I don't know, do we need, Francisco or anyone, do we need a roll call vote on voting, or can we just do it by ayes, or how does that look?
Griselda, being that this is an ad hoc board, do we need to have the roll call?
Mr. Chair, if you just wanna do the number of ayes and none, it would be fine.
Okay, but how do we vote over Zoom? Do we do it through the group chat, or does everyone just come on and say aye, or how does that look?
I would say, I would ask for each member to state their name and vote.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Doug?
Doug Cowan, aye.
Sharon?
Sharon Thomas, aye.
Jolene?
Jolene Martinez, aye.
Michael?
Michael Harris, aye.
Debbie?
Debbie Moore, aye.
Myself, aye. Christopher Shaljo, aye. Okay, it looks like that does pass, and we will be meeting weekly for this ad hoc board. Awesome.
Mr. Chair, will there be a specific day of the week or a specific time in which? This is Francisco Payares for the record.
Of course. So today is Monday the 8th. Do Monday mornings work for everyone on the board, or does another day of the week work best? Jolene?
I think I can adjust my schedule anyway, as long as it's recurring the same time every week. That way I can predict and plan ahead and move around. So, but this time right now is good for me. And I think it leaves the rest of the week, if any of us need to do any business or research or anything related to our recommendations, it gives us the work week. I don't know if the only difficulty would be that it runs up against the same day the council holds their meetings. And so if there was any recommendation we needed to have, that, you know, that there might be some conflict in the turnaround time. But as long as it's the same day every week, I don't have any preference.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Michael Harris, you had your hand up as well, sir?
Yeah, this time is not the best for me. I have another standing meeting, which is actually at exactly this time. But Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Fridays, I'm pretty open also. But I can also reschedule it. If everyone else is like Monday at 9 works great, then I can change mine.
Okay, wonderful. Debbie, you have your hand up as well?
I do. So I have another standing meeting exact time. I'm just not on it today at 9 o'clock. I would recommend maybe we look at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays. But that would be sort of my recommendation.
Okay. And then Doug, you had your hand up as well, sir.
Yes, likewise, Tuesday morning would be an excellent time for me. Monday mornings I have standing meetings as well.
Okay. I think that works. So we can
No,
do,
Chris,
yes, ma'am.
Tuesday morning, that's when the county meetings are, and I often have to go for things that are on the county agenda. And I think, are there more people on this committee than just the 6 of? We have everybody here who's supposed to be on this committee?
And Mr. Chair, Ms. Thomas, the council hasn't yet appointed the remaining members of this board, and they will be appointing them on the next council meeting.
And when?
Okay,
That'll be next week,
that will be,
right?
Mr.
Next
Chair,
Monday?
yes, Ms. Thomas, that will be next Monday, correct?
Maybe we should wait a little till we get more people. I don't, anyway, I can't do Tuesday morning. That's the county commission meeting.
okay. Does the end of the week, maybe like a Thursday, work for everyone? I don't know of any local meetings that really happen on Thursdays. Can we do a Thursday at 9 a.m.? Hey, and guys, on your hand raise, can you please put it down after you've been called on? Because I know that there's a lot of hands that have been raised the entire time, and I'm not sure which is for now or previous comments. But okay, Debbie, you had your hand raised, ma'am.
Debbie Moore, Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. I cannot do Thursdays at 9. I could potentially do it after 9 or after about 10, but not 9.
Okay. And then Doug, you had your hand raised as well, sir.
Yes, Doug Cowan, I could do a Thursday after 10 o'clock.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, I'm open Thursday all day, so that would be fine.
Okay, I would recommend that we do then Thursdays at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. If that works for everyone, if you'll just give me a thumbs up. I have everyone on my screen so we can figure that out. Okay, Doug, does that work for you as well, sir? Yes, perfect. Okay, so do we want to meet this Thursday or do we want to hold off until the 18th and meet on the 18th at 10? Any recommendations from the board? Debbie, go ahead.
Debbie Moore, Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. So Francisco and Griselda, when did you say the other members will be appointed by the city council?
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, the rest of the members are going to be appointed on Monday, not today, exactly 1 week from today.
So, Chris, I would say let's wait until, to Sharon's point, till we have everyone. If I count right, we have 2 or 3 more that are going to be appointed. So I would say wait and start it on the 18th after we have all of our members. And I would just highly recommend staff contact those additional members as soon as possible, if they know about it, just to let them know once they're final, that once they're official, that we have a meeting coming up. That's what my recommendation. I agree with Sharon on that.
I fully agree as well. Doug, go ahead.
I agree with that statement. Feel like we need to be fully staffed on the board.
Wonderful, thank you, sir. And then Sharon.
Yes, I agree. I also, between now and then, maybe we should all be looking at the 2 documents that we got in the email, what the state approach is and the other things that are going on, so that we can start to talk about that document from the state, if that's what we're going to be using to follow, to inform what we do.
Of course, thank you, ma'am. Okay, wonderful. So our next meeting officially will be June the 18th at 10 a.m. Via wonderful Zoom. So we can definitely put that on our calendars. And then the next item on the agenda looks to be the introduction and purpose of the board, which we went over earlier in the meeting. So I don't know if we necessarily need to go over that again, if you're all okay with that. And then last but not least on the discussion would be current initiatives for dealing with COVID-19. Francisco, did you have any recommendations on what we should be looking at and or talking about on current initiatives dealing with COVID?
Mr. Chair, this is Francisco Payares. What I suggest is go around and ask on each one of your own industries, what changes have you performed or what adjustments have you carried? Describing different industries have these different necessities for accommodating as to how each one has been accommodating with regards to this pandemic and in order to carry your daily operations and stuff of that nature. I also have a document that was sent by Debbie that whenever necessary, Debbie, you can just give me a shout out and I'll share the screen so you can everyone see it to regards to what is the Greater Chamber performing in informing its members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so then let's go ahead and do that, and let's just go around and just kind of talk a little bit about what we have had to do and or how we have made adjustments within our business and or in our realm of business, really. And Doug, you're first on my screen, so why don't you go ahead, sir?
Okay, Doug Cowan. What we've had to do is obviously minimize seating in our auditorium for services because of the distancing requirements, and we've had to accommodate additional exits so that people don't congregate trying to get out of one location, increased sanitation measures, so forth. We've had to create additional opportunities for childcare within the facility, separating by age groups so that they're smaller groups and so that they're not congregating in small areas with a lot of children. The school, we've gone to virtual learning techniques and remote learning. So that is challenging, trying to keep those kiddos going because parents are beginning to go back to work. And so they're not able to stay home with their children to help them with education scenarios. So we're right now having to look at how we're going to proceed coming into July. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you. Sharon Thomas, you are next on my screen if you want to go next.
So the transit, the county transit system is, we've reduced routes a little bit. We've put a big shield behind the driver. We have sanitizer on the buses. You know, people are encouraged to only sit with someone that they're with, but leave spaces in between. So the ridership is down some, but there's still quite a bit of ridership. On the workforce, of course, the staff for Workforce Connections has been extremely busy with all the unemployment applications. So we haven't had a board meeting for a while. The Workforce Talent Group that Debbie and Griselda are both on as well continues working with local businesses and what kind of, so we have a better understanding of what jobs are available in our area from the businesses in our area. So there's been one study of business roundtables that Debbie helped set up. So that was aerospace, space, military, those kinds of things. So we have a real good understanding now of what the jobs are there and what kind of training is needed. So the discussion in that group is sort of about thinking about a new normal after this, that we can find ways to find better jobs for people that already exist in this area, and that we can develop better workforce training programs. And especially when we have some of these jobs are not going to come back. So some of these people are going to be looking for education or an opportunity to get some kind of certificate for some other kind of job. So there's a lot of work going on in that area.
Thank you, ma'am. Jolene Martinez, do you want to go next?
Hi, everybody. Our agency, Families and Youth Incorporated, we provide many different services in many different sectors. Our primary sector that remains serving families in Las Cruces every day is our free meals program. So we serve over 1,000 families in Las Cruces every day. We have been doing that through the whole crisis. So we do that with as much PPE as we can provide our staff, and hand washing, hand sanitizing in between each contact. We have multiple sites across the city of Las Cruces. So we have someone who drives across this different sites just to ensure that we're following our safety practices. And we've been able to stay safe throughout the current crisis while serving that many families throughout the day. We have a congregate care setting where we house children who are runaway, homeless, or experiencing some other crisis that has them removed from the home. So we've had, I would say, about 40 children come in and out of the facility. When they come in the facility, what we're doing is we're quarantining them in a certain portion of the building, allowing them 2 days before we have them tested for COVID-19, and then waiting on their test results before we integrate them with the rest of the children in the facility. And while they're in the facility, if they're in a common space, we do have them wear face coverings, which is difficult, of course, to ask children between the age of 12 and 18 to wear face coverings. It's all pretty annoying to them. One of the limitations we have there is we prevent them from going out and having social outings. So of course, for teenagers, this is a huge issue in Las Cruces. We've already kind of started to see other kids come around the facility, trying to use the parks, even though they're closed. Lots of different challenges for continuing to keep our teenagers entertained and occupied, especially as the months warm up. So we've been challenged with that. We have a lot of other health services that have gone completely telemedicine. So we had to transition very quickly from a walk-in patient situation to where now we're seeing about 85% of our patients via telehealth. We do remain sending our therapists and other individuals out to homes where the families are in high-risk situations. Maybe there's domestic violence or a child welfare issue or some other issue that we can't manage via or make a good assessment. So we have a combination of a lot of different strategies to address safety. I think one of the things that's a challenge for us is not having a direction about what's going to happen this fall for school. A lot of our planning is centered around what children and families are going to be doing. So it gives us a challenge in planning when we don't really know what's going to happen to all the kids that we care for in the fall. So that's a challenge for us. I know the university, at least in the College of Health and Human Services, is going all virtual for the fall. So they're planning all virtual learning, and they haven't really seen a drop in enrollment or a drop in losing any teachers or anything like that. So that's the plan that they have right now. And they're continuing to seek internships for places, some places right now that are struggling to take new employees or new people into the workforce because they're just challenged right now with their current workforce. So they are being really challenged placing interns for their learning opportunities. But that's about the majority of our sector. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Michael Harris.
It's Michael Harris. So our industry is, kind of general technology consulting. So our immediate effect has been relatively minimal. Everyone just, take your laptop home and don't come back type thing. But we're seeing some challenges in like employees who have to take care of their children. So a lot of uncertainty around, what's school going to look like. Even though everyone is working from home, we're not necessarily as productive at home, or, if you have to take care of children. We're also seeing some challenges with hiring and placing interns. That's something that we usually do over the summer, but with not having an office space, not not really being able to have that one-on-one time with new people. We've kind of put off some of those plans. So even though the core of the consulting of the, like our core really is software development right now, and telecom stuff. So, you know, software and telecom march on, but, you know, we've also kind of curtailed some of the other activities that help drive, you know, new placements and things. And otherwise, like safety wise, you know, everyone who doesn't need to be in the office is working from home. We've transitioned some of our service calls and things to local clients. You know, if 2 people have to go out, we have them take different vehicles. There's consultation with people beforehand. You know, are they comfortable with people coming out? What kind of safety precautions do they want our techs to take on site? And just kind of minimizing having to go out and do things in person. A lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of screen sharing, and remote diagnostics.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. I guess I will go next, and then we'll leave Debbie Moore with the chamber last, since she has some documents that she wants to show us. So I represent Salud, which is a decently sized restaurant. We're very blessed that we have 2 patios that have been saving us the last few days. You know, for our industry, which is food and beverage in general, it's been very difficult the last few months. You know, we make money off of putting people in seats. So for restaurants and food and beverage, you know, most business owners have really had to shift the way that we are doing and handling business, which we are shifting from dine-in guests, wining and dining them, giving them an experience, to greeting them at a curb, getting them to-go service, getting them delivery service. So that got a lot of small restaurants, large restaurants, through being shut down and going through that. So now that we are at 50% capacity, we are learning what is working, what is not working. We have done a lot of work with the New Mexico Restaurant Association, a lot of work with the Department of Health, the Environment Department, coming up with safe practices, best practices. You know, we are on the front lines now of sanitation and health, and making sure that people are staying distant, staying clean within our restaurant, even on the patios. So I think that's the way that we're looking at it, is how to not reinvent the wheel, but definitely work on, you know, a different business strategy. So I think a lot of the things that I'm going to be able to bring to the board is how, you know, we can move and transition into a different kind of business model for small business, because it's just not what it used to be. Even running at 50% capacity within our restaurant and on our patios, we're not seeing people that feel very comfortable coming out still. So we're definitely working on that, definitely increased our sanitation practices, brought in different resources to help us get through, using different delivery services, online services, making our menu more user-friendly to guests, and people traveling too that are driving through, and making sure that we can serve them in a comfortable manner. But also we have a lot of focuses at Salud, at least, on our team members, and our team members staying healthy, and our team members, you know, mental health, physical health, while in the restaurant, while outside of the restaurant. You know, these times are definitely a little difficult. So we're definitely focusing on how they are doing, especially because they are coming back to work and they are dealing with guests on a regular basis. And those guests are not wearing masks within the facility because you can't eat with a mask on. So we're definitely looking at that. We're definitely trying to figure out the best way to navigate that situation. And I hope that we can all brainstorm on different ways to collaborate to figure this out for all business, big and small. So thank you. Debbie, and then if we can get Francisco to share the documents that you have, we can all go through those.
Well, right before he shares the documents, I just want to say to Jolene and Michael and to all of the members of the committee, I am on the Las Cruces Public Schools Reentry Task Force. And one of the issues they are grappling with that I really brought to their attention is the challenge with the schedule and how it's going to impact the business community, because that is a big thing. And so obviously we meet weekly, we're starting to meet weekly too. So just for you to know that I'm working on that, I know it's going to be a real challenge. I have an employee that can be very definitely impacted by the schedules and how it all comes out. And they have not received the guidelines from the state yet. So that is something that's up there. I think as we go through this, to Sharon's point, as we get, it's not just as simple as turning on your lights and getting us open. It's to Chris's point about how to look at the new norm and what does that look like. And that's going to be a new norm for our children, no matter what happens in whatever the public education department of the state says. But I'm real concerned about the out of school care, how we do that, how it impacts the workforce. So just before we go to the shared screen. So we've been very busy at the chamber. So Francisco, you can share. I'm not real sure which of the documents you're going to put up first. Let's see. So we started with Chris's picture on it. We started with the 5 ways to prepare to reopen. And we started this probably 6 weeks prior to when they were still in the curbside sector of things. And we had several Zoom calls in this regard, several emails out to the business community. And this was open to all businesses within Las Cruces, not just our quote unquote membership. The city was so gracious as to invite other businesses within the community. The other 2 chambers shared our information. So basically, number 1 thing was for them to build a COVID plan. And this plan not only talks about building one to make sure that the measures are in place for safe opening, but also, again, to Chris's point, how it's going to adapt to that. And part of that plan is also a contingency plan as we approach. Everyone keeps saying we're going to have another one in the fall, another outbreak or continuation of this outbreak. So that's been very important to them. The next one is respect the social distancing. You can read this, create a cleaning schedule, market your COVID plan, and respect the process. So basically we educated our members on it. And I have to say, Chris and at Salute and many of our restaurants, particularly many of our businesses in general, have gone way above and beyond the minimum requirements that the state has had. So I think many of them have their cleaning schedule posted. They have a consumer or client, what is required of them within their establishment. They say when things are done, the social distancing. So it's sort of the rules of the road as well as the state requirements. So many businesses, I'm really proud that they stepped up. They've been creative. You go in some of them and they have a mask. If you don't have a mask, they have gloves, they have sanitizer, they have their schedule. You can see them cleaning. And so those are very impressive things that I'm very proud of our business community doing. Marketing, again, both physically in the either the stores or restaurant, as well as on social media, and then be very respectful of the process. I think that is a key component. I keep saying Pan Las Cruces kind, that we need to be kind to each other. I know there's been several people that have voiced concerns over wearing a mask, and I think I personally wear my mask, and I freak out when someone doesn't have it. But I think respecting the process, working through this. We're coming out of a time when we were all in our homes. Many of us are still working from home. And I think that is a key component for the mental health, the behavior health. And I've kind of evolved this in my deliverables in talking to people as number 1, you have a fear of a business owner to make sure that are they protecting themselves. In some cases, I have a business here in town that is a mother-daughter, and she wanted to protect her mother. And so she's extra, and Chris and Russell want to protect each other. So that's number one. Number two on that is, how do they protect their work family? They want their staff to come back into a safe environment. And the third fear is that of the consumer. And I think what I've noticed this week with the restaurants opening at 50% is that consumer is a little bit more hesitant on coming back. So we are now in the process of doing some Zooms on, and we also did Zooms on the idle loans, the PPPs, access to capital. So now we're on this, I'm starting a Zoom on, how to take that next step. And so I think a key component, and Francisco, I don't know if you have the opening phase from the governor there, but you can probably not share this now, and we'll go back to my screen. One thing that I think is important is that phase 2 is supposed to be July 1. And that is all connected with our numbers, with our effective rate, with how we're working within the county and the Southwest region, and that will be decisions made. So to Sharon Thomas's point earlier about the recovery, it's sort of this simultaneously thing, is that we have to make sure all of those safety precautions are met, that we, health and well-being of our community is first. So the chamber has put that, and with our other committee, that with these 16 agencies, to really communicate what the safety issues is. So I think this committee really needs to talk about how is it impacting our nonprofits, the deliverables there, and how do we move forward with all these 5 steps, but with also within the guidelines of the industry standard CSPs put out by the governor, as well as with her plan. So I'm also on many some national things, and we are ahead in some ways. We are doing really good on our numbers statewide. I'm very proud of our state, but I think we need to respect that process and realize that the next opening phase is going to be dependent on who we are as a state and where our numbers are. That's it, Chris, unless we're not, okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing what you all are doing within your industry, business, and sector to figure out how to survive really during this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so it looks like that ends the discussion part of the agenda, and it goes on to future discussions. So we kind of talked about everything that we wanted to do that we're doing within our own industry. So it might be good to talk about what we think we need to talk about next. And I see Jolene's hand up first. Jolene.
Thank you, Chris. Debbie, your presentation brings something up to mind for me. I know that in our sector, we're struggling to, we don't have a big training or technical assistance center or that kind of same support. In the nonprofit world, we all kind of really fend for ourselves when it comes to following directions of the state. And I know our agency is likely more equipped. We have more connections with the city and other funders that give us technical guidance on how to reopen. But I worry about other small businesses who don't have support from a big institution like the chamber or like, the government to really give guidance to them on how to reopen, and how maybe we provide the city with some advice on how they create an opportunity for other small businesses, other sectors that are not committed to, like a union environment or a state environment, and how they can come get training and technical assistance on how they might reopen their business. Because I think that just having a bunch of businesses in Las Cruces or other sectors that are really trying to figure it out on their own, I think creates an opportunity for confusion and chaos for our communities, especially our families. Our perspective, even though we represent a business, I think we more represent families, vulnerable families, because that's who we serve. And so we think from the perspective of a vulnerable family. And I think when we think about that, I think it's worrisome when we send our families back out to look for work, to find childcare. And so I think maybe even developing a way where we could rate their safety practices or help families navigate a system where they can identify who might be the safest place or where their practices meet the recommendations that have been set out from this committee or somewhere else. I just think that I think when I see you provide that technical assistance from the chamber's perspective, I'm like, man, I wish we had some kind of committee or something like that in our sector that would pull us all together. So I think that was really great for me to see. It got my ideas churning a little bit.
So Chris, can I hop on there? I know there's other hands, but I just want to answer this directly. So Jolene, one thing we're doing with our partnership and our other task force is we have a part of that task force is going to be addressing specifically the nonprofit, specifically behavioral and mental health issues. And one thing I'm working on now, and I do work with the city and all of the business license within the city and through the other chambers. So we're trying to be very broad based, but I think the next step, and I think this recovery board could play a role in, is how we start breaking down some of the industry sectors and how we start looking for that. The resources. I've been working with Councilor Gonzara on getting a resource of mental health providers and things for our people who are are facing anxiety. What were those? So I think working together, we need to create more resources. But yes, having also worked in the nonprofit world in my career, I agree with you. And there is also a certificate, quote unquote, program coming down from the state that sort of does that. I wouldn't say necessarily a rating, but they go through some training that'll be videos. It's primarily for the hospitality, but I'm going to see industry, but I'm going to see if we can adjust it for general business, including nonprofits. I think it's a dual thing. The consumer needs to be protected as well as the other. So I just wanted to jump in there. Sorry, Chris.
You're muted, Chris.
Mr. Chair, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I think that's really important, Debbie, and just kind of piggybacking off of that. I know that something that I'm going to share with the group is what like Russ and I are doing at Salud. We have a 5-page document that is going over kind of what we have done to increase our understanding of cleaning practice and what COVID is. So I'll be sharing that too. I think Michael had his hand up next. Mike.
Yeah, so Michael Harris. One thing that I noticed early on when the state started shutting things down, our office actually closed like March 13th or 14th when the school district closed. We were like, okay, we should send everyone home. But other like just kind of general office environments didn't, and some of our customers and partners who are in other essential quote industries like telecom and utilities were reluctant to even like send non-essential staff home. So what I've seen is that there's a lot of focus on restaurants and hospitality and other places where like the general public is coming in, and that's where most of the efforts in explaining how to open your business are going. But there's this whole other sector of people who just like go and work in an office and do mortgages or write software or whatever. The public doesn't come into my office ever. Our door is locked, the UPS guy comes, and that's it. So really, we're trying to maintain safety for our employees. And I think there's a lot of other people who are, and there's not much guidance that has been widely disseminated again about how do you deal with that. So I think that's an area that we should look into and make sure that there's I don't know if it's a catch-all, but everyone's like looking for my industry, and it's like, well, there's not really any guidelines for a software development company in the state guidelines or the city guidelines. So but if you're able to read between the lines, you can say, okay, here's the spirit and here's what I should do to protect my employees. But I think it would be nice to kind of look for those other industries that we could provide guidance to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. I think Doug had his hand up next, and then Griselda. Doug.
Hello, this is Doug Cowan. I wanted to throw out the idea that one of the things that I think is going to help establish people gaining confidence. We talked about the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry. You know, they're allowed to go 50%, but there's not 50% showing up yet. And that's because of a confidence issue with the public. And I think while we have to maintain some very serious precautions, we don't want to minimize the threat. I think it's important at the same time to help to build a campaign for the public, as well as our employees, our staff, all of our teams that we put together, confidence that we're moving forward in safe measures, and that stepping out of their house is not a death sentence, but at the same time, precautions need to be taken. And so I think it's important that as we talk about strategies and things like that, I think it's important that part of that strategy ought to be to help build the public's confidence in getting back into, everybody's talking about a new normal. I don't know if I know exactly what that is going to be, because Americans have a pretty short memory. And so a year from now, who knows if they even remember this thing. But the bottom line is, I think to get past some of this is to help build some policies and some ideas that are going to build the customer, the consumers, and all of our staff's confidence in that we're really trying to help them stay safe and provide to them services that they need.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug. And then Griselda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you define the discussion item, what I want to offer from our department is to have the different program managers for the discussion items that have been brought to as potential discussion items. One of them would be our business development program manager, and her name is Mandy Gus. She can speak to what we have done. But I love the idea that Jolene mentioned of coordinating more efforts to serve the broader small business community, which we are working on. But I'd like for that point to be discussed on the item that, oh my God, Debbie, I lost your name for 1 second. That Debbie spoke about the safe practices related to hospitality. That program is launching today. And I'd like to invite Rochelle Miller Hernandez, our director for Visit Las Cruces, who could speak to that as well. Those are items that we can offer from our department and make it part of the discussion. Shall those items be the selected items from you all, Madam, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Griselda. I think that is a wonderful idea. We definitely should be looking at those items while talking in our next meeting. Does anyone else have any other kind of items that we should be discussing on the next agenda or topics besides what has already been mentioned? Go ahead, Michael.
Sure. So it's not quite a new topic. It's a general question. Are we permitted to send out, we're all on the same CC group, obviously, an email. Can we send potential topics to the entire group between meetings, or are we only allowed to really kind of meet as a group in a formal meeting? Question for Francisco.
Wonderful. I think Griselda can answer that as well. Griselda?
I believe that we have the option to exchange information via email as long as no action is taken. But let me verify that with our city clerk, and hopefully I'll get an answer before this meeting is over.
Wonderful.
Okay, thanks.
And then Sharon Thomas.
I just wanted to mention that Tracy Bryan and working with Darlene at the Workforce Connection. They're putting together a video on how to look for a job now. So I just got the link, but the link doesn't go to the video. So I'll try to straighten that out and get the right link and send it to everybody.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm guessing Griselda has an answer. Griselda?
Not yet on the answer, but tied to the workforce discussion that Sherry mentioned, we could also talk about the pilot virtual job fair that we're planning in partnership with Workforce Solutions. But I think the vulnerable population that Jolene spoke about, those would be potentially some of those customers that we want to reach out, and that we at least from our department's perspective, we have been challenged on reaching to them. So that may be another appropriate topic for this discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. Debbie, you have your hand raised?
I did. I wanted to ask Sharon a question. Early in her presentation, she talked about transportation. And I haven't really seen any word from the city or otherwise or county about it being a safe ride to encourage people potentially looking for jobs. In that regard, is there, I mean, I think part of it, we need to promote that it is quote unquote safe to maybe ride a bus with, you know, all the, I mean, I just want to make sure we include that, particularly as we talk about looking for jobs. I just want to make that connection.
Yeah, I can't speak for the city, but I will find out. I know for the county bus service, you know, we do deep cleaning every night. You know, we've done everything we can to keep everything clean. We've got the bus drivers with masks and we have hand sanitizer available on the buses. I assume they're doing similar things at the city, but I will find out exactly what they're doing. And did you want something more information about, you said something about getting to jobs? You just want to be assured that riding the bus will be a safe way to get to jobs?
Well, I just think it needs to be promoted as an alternative, safe mode of transportation, because as you know, in the national news, it has gotten some negativity of the public transportation pieces, because actually a bus driver in Michigan, anyway, he ultimately passed because of COVID complications. And I just think they need, the buses, perhaps they need to do a marketing campaign themselves. When someone comes on the bus, this is what we do, advertise their schedule as well. So sort of use that as sort of the business side. Now, when people come in your place of business, which is a bus, that they feel safe. And I would assume Pastor Cowan's doing it at the church. I mean, I think everyone's reaching out and doing what they can to make their customers, clients, as well as along with it, you know, Michael does, the city doesn't have much traffic, and neither do we at the chamber, but I'm doing everything to make my employees feel safe. And so I think it's the same thing. They need to look at that bus as their place of business, and this is appropriate behavior on the bus. We're doing everything we can, and then utilize that as we continue to, I mean, people are hiring here. And I think that I just want to make sure that we include that as part of the package. And I would assume Jolene at NMSU, they've done the same thing as you go from building to building. I just want to include them, Sharon. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I know what we're doing. I don't know if David's put that kind of advertising on the buses, but I'll find out. And we'll also talk to Michael and see what's going on with the city buses. And then these other things that we're working on and trying to make customers feel comfortable. I mean, any of these things that we come up with, if, you know, we can advertise those things on the buses. We just need little placards to put up, you know, above the seats, and so that's possible too, as a way to get information out.
Wonderful, thank you. Jolene, I think you had your hand up next.
I think just as we continue to discuss things, maybe some other items we can add. We don't have any people who are identified just as customers or consumers of services in the community. We're all business sector leaders, or I think it'd be interesting to add a family or an individual or a couple that might suggest to us what, you know, when we're talking about customer confidence or we're talking about consumer confidence, we don't have any consumers or customers on our board yet. And I think the other thing that maybe we can help identify is the sectors that are growing as this crisis hits. You know, we have food delivery services, that sector is really growing. And then how does the city play a role in, you know what, I'm not a business person, I don't run the books, but I know that there's an issue like, you know, when people order from Amazon, those taxes don't stay local, their purchases aren't, you know, contributing to the city's budget. We're losing all this economic input, right? From people who are not going to hotels, all the lodging taxes that we count on, all these different things. So I think maybe part of our board might be how do we make some recommendations on how our our city or local delivery purchases or systems are taxed in a way that can compensate for the losses that the city's going to have in other sectors and industries, because there's agencies like us that really depend on funding from the city. You know, we depend on funding from the city to run a homeless shelter for kids. So, and I think that there's when their finances are struggling, you know, our services are the first to kind of go when there's not the adequate funding for programming. And so I just wonder how we make up for those economic disadvantages that our governments are going to experience, you know, in the long haul from the local taxes being an issue. And so I'm not a business person, but it makes me, you know, leery as just someone who knows the impact of it on the backside. So maybe some additional things that we can add to the agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jolene. Doug, you had your hand raised as well, sir.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to kind of clean up what I said earlier, and that is I feel like the part of our ability to build that confidence with folks. You know, folks walk into our building, if they see that it's dirty, if they see people frightened, if they don't see that we're taking some things on a serious category, that's going to deter them to return or to step in at all. As you know, we've already heard this morning from Ms. Moore from the chamber. One of the points was to build that confidence by showing people that you're serious. But on the other side of the coin, I think as we do that, it's going to be very important that we build on the successes and begin to mitigate the fears, because it is ultimately the reason why the restaurants are not getting the consumers, and the reason why some other businesses are not getting their consumers, the reason why folks are not walking in our doors, and the reason why some people are not taking jobs or getting on the buses ultimately is for a fear. And so if we can begin to mitigate the fear and begin to show people successes by, again, showing them our responsibility, but also showing them that folks are beginning to engage, and they're not going to go home and end up in the ICU unit because they go to a restaurant and enjoy a wonderful meal. And we begin to show those successes, I think that will begin to build those confidences. So then the economy will begin to loosen up and help all of us begin to start seeing some a good recovery. That's going to be very important for the mental health. That fear factor in my line of work, I deal directly with folks dealing with this mental health issue, and people that maybe on a regular routine do not struggle with some of the issues that they're struggling with now. They've been locked up, absolutely terrified, afraid to even go outside. And because of that, it's playing a very significant role in their mental health. And if they begin to see some success, that'll begin to mitigate that fear, and it'll help them going forward.
Thank you, Doug. I actually very much so agree with that. With the mental health part, we've been noticing, because we did have several team members on during COVID when we were only allowed to do curbside and delivery, and it was definitely a struggle making them feel very much so inside their comfort level. So I definitely think it's something that we really need to look at, that we can all do as a board, because it's an issue. It really is. And the thing is that we keep treating COVID like it's a dirty word almost. If that's, I mean, it's really difficult. There was a couple articles that came out here locally and across the country with restaurants having a case of COVID, and it's just treated like it's such a dirty thing. And that also hurts industry. It also hurts tourism. It hurts everything. So I definitely think that's something that we need to look at, is how not to treat COVID like it's bad. You know, it's happening. It's something that we're living through, and I think that's something that we can also focus on during this committee. Anyone else have any? Jolene?
Yeah, I think the only other, I think when we look at other partners like our local media and our local media outlets where families are really getting their information from, I think is also really important that we inform them and help shape the narrative. Because I think that, right, just even today, right now, while we're meeting, they released an article about how all the healthcare workers in Doniana have seen an increase in their COVID positive results. And so there's industries there that are in our community that are suffering. And there's family, those individuals are tied to families. Those families live in our community as consumers. So, I think that we have to have an interest in the fears. I agree that fear gets in the way for people, but I also believe that some of their fears are valid. Some of our families are really, really hurting. And so how do we come around them and rally as a business? It's just such a complicated dialogue for all of us to have. But, I think that that's something that we can continue to assess, or where the workforce is really hurting. It's clear that our healthcare workforce is really hurting. And so I think our response has to be pliable to industries that, our response to the healthcare workforce reopening or recovering might be different than what it is for restaurants or tourism or nonprofit or transportation. So I think just being open to having a differentiated response would be helpful as we move forward.
Thank you, Jolene. I appreciate that. Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to recap, Dr. Martinez, Griselda Martinez sent the question that you had with regards to whether there could be share of information. And I think that qualifies as rolling quorum. So that would be in violation of open acts meetings. So we would need to do the discussion in these sessions in itself. Nevertheless, you can set up those discussion items for the future as one of those items to be brought up for. So as Mr. Harris was mentioning, if he's willing to share some of that information, or we could put it as a point of discussion, and on the next meeting we can touch on that once everyone is here. I think Griselda even just send further information. So two members discussing, they can have as many emails as they want, as long as they don't have a quorum of members discussing via email. So there can be a discussion between two, just that, not the overall number. You could potentially distribute related documentation to the group. I just don't think you can have discussion upon it. That's at least my perception on, well, my perception, I think that's what it goes to. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a point. Do we have items for future discussion? The ones I was able to write is that from the city's perspective is business development initiatives or the COVID-related instances that people in small businesses that Ms. Jolene Martinez was mentioning can go to. Then this goes along to what Mr. Harris mentioned in coordinating small efforts for the small businesses. So we can say what are some of the current existing resources that we have. Then another item that Griselda mentioned and was with regards to the hotels and restaurants initiatives that Rochelle from Mrs. Las Cruces could be able to present on. Also, Mr. Cowan mentioned about the consumer confidence. That's another topic that could potentially be discussed. Transportation guidelines for buses and workers, as it was discussed by Debbie Moore and also was discussed by Ms. Sherry Thomas. And then another concern was how's the city funding affected by COVID. So those are multiple topics, Mr. Chair. Maybe
Wonderful.
we want to do 2, 3, maybe.
Yes, probably. I think that's good. As far as it goes with the one with public transportation along with the buses, I think it might actually be really a good, helpful thing if we included in there things like Uber and Lyft and the practices that they're using within their own car. I don't know if that's something that we should look at as well. And then another thing that I just received a message on was possible training, whether it is for health and sanitation or anything else that maybe we can get going with the city to help not only small business, but also others within the community to help inform them of safe practices. So maybe kind of like an online forum training type initiative that the city might be able to offer was something that I just got a text message on. So that might be something worth looking into as well. Griselda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, for community-wide educational opportunities, we could invite our community outreach person to help us with that as well.
Wonderful. I think that would be very, very helpful. Anyone else have any suggestions or how to limit these ideas just to a few? Sharon?
So it seems to me that we were kind of circling around the idea of a, we have these buy local campaigns, but how we're going to develop community confidence and all the things that Jolene was talking about, and how we can help shape that narrative. So I think that's really important to come up with for this, because it really all depends on whether or not people come back to the restaurants and the hotels, want to go back into the office. And so I think that anything we can do to build that narrative is really important and basic to everything else.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sharon. And I think that would be a really good thing to, since we're going to have a few extra members to the group, that would be something very easy for them to touch on, since it kind of broadens the whole entire realm of business. So I definitely think building confidence and mitigate fears and building on the success of what everyone's doing, like Doug mentioned, I think that should definitely be one of our discussion items, since it's something that everyone can kind of join in on and talk about in the future. And then what do we think about for another discussion item if we wanted to limit it to 2 or 3? Anyone? Francisco, can you mention a couple of the other ones that we mentioned today?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Francisco Payares for the record. The current ones that we have, let me see. The current ones that we have that have been mentioned so far is the community outreach training and sanitation training, and also incorporating the New Mexico Safe program, the business development initiatives that we currently have for the industries and for the state, for the industries that we have here in the city. The other one was the one we mentioned about the hotel and food and accommodation services that Visit Las Cruces can provide. The other one we mentioned was the restoring of consumer confidence, which goes back to what, with this additional element of the Buy Local campaign. And we have the transportation guidelines and the city funding, how has it been affected by COVID? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items possibly for discussion.
Wonderful. I think that the business development initiatives might be a good one for us to add on there, since it kind of, once again, brings into what the city is already doing. Anyone have any comment on that one? Michael.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be very good. I think that it does go a little bit beyond the scope of purely reopening, but as other people have said earlier, some businesses aren't going to reopen. And I think there's a lot of stuff that the city can do in terms of business development to help in the longer term.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. So far, guys, everyone, we have talking about the building confidence and talking about mitigating fears. And then the second would be business development initiatives. Griselda, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for the first topic on building confidence and mitigating fears, do you have any specific person that you would like for us to invite, or we'll leave it open just for discussion on this committee members?
I believe you said Mandy Gus would be a great person to talk to, and then maybe someone from the CVB would probably be a really good person to contact on that one. Would that be correct?
So we would be linking it back to what we're already doing through business development and the campaign on safe practices for the hospitality industry.
I think that would be a great way to start. Does anyone have anything else to comment on that? Doug.
Yes, again, I think talking about safe practices would definitely have to be a part of that. But again, controlling that narrative to where we're focused on the success, removing the fear. So we're talking about the positive side of it instead of the fearful, scary side of it as we talk about those things.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Coleman, so based on that, then our community outreach, Jamie Rickman would be a good person to be part of that discussion, if that's okay with the group.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you. So far we have 2 discussion points for the next meeting. Does anyone want to add a third that Francisco has mentioned earlier? Are we wanting to keep it at the 2 discussion points for the next meeting? Michael.
I think that transportation is also kind of interesting, although I think there's plenty in those to talk about, but I agree that transportation should be high on our list too. I don't know that I would call it a backlash yet against public transportation, but there certainly is a lot of fear there, and I think it's something we need to address.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. I agree with you. And Sharon, you have your hand raised as well.
Well, I could ask David Armijo and Michael Bartholomew, who they're the directors of the city transportation and the county transportation, to come and speak, if that would help.
I think that would be a great idea. So let's go ahead and keep it to those 3 discussion. I think that would be a really good place to start. I think everyone can have a little bit of input on those. So it would be those 3 discussion points for the next meeting. And does anyone have any comments or discussion on the 3 or thoughts before we go ahead and approve those 3 discussion points? I don't see anyone with their hand raised. Francisco, is that okay with those 3 and then going on from there? Oh, Sharon, I see that you have a question.
I just want you to repeat the 3 so we've all got the same list.
Of course. Francisco, what did you have on your list, sir?
Mr. Chair, for the next items, we have the business development initiatives that are currently existing to address COVID. The next one is that one to be presented by Ms. Mandy Gus. The next one is the community outreach training for sanitation, including the New Mexico Safe program. And I think that for that, we have, Griselda suggested, Jamie Rickman from our public communication office. And then community outreach office, sorry. And then the next one is transportation guidelines for buses and workers. Those are the three that I grouped. Is that correct?
Wonderful. Griselda?
Yes, for the safe practices, I'm not positive what I don't know what we're currently doing for safe practices or promotion. So I would leave it open to see how the city could help us with promotion and awareness campaigns rather than a presentation of what we're already doing. I'm not sure that we're already doing something specific to that.
Okay, thank you, Griselda. I think that is great. And then Doug, you have your hand raised, sir.
I do. I just wanted to let you know that we've been working with another large national nonprofit agency, a legal team, the National Council of and they Law and Liberty, and they have provided to us quite a bit of information concerning safe practices and how to help encourage folks. And so I'd be happy to try to share some of that at the next meeting. I could have some of that material available.
Wonderful, thank you. And you can also email that to the group. I think that would be great too, that we could take a look at that. So we have our 3 discussion points for the next meeting. We will have a few new members, it sounds like, at the next meeting too, to go through this. So I think that knocks off that discussion point. Does anyone have anything else that we need to go over for future discussions? Ms. Debbie Moore, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, it wasn't a meeting. Debbie Moore, Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. Regarding the consumer information, Mavita, our Mesilla Valley Economic Development Alliance, just finished their 2nd consumer survey. So we might consider bringing in either Davin or Eric on to talk about their consumer. They've done twice now, consumer survey on, and that is as it directs to, are they going to be shopping and coming back? So that's another one.
Wonderful, thank you, Debbie. I think, okay, so as far as we are on the agenda for today, that would kind of conclude the whole future planning for discussions for the next meeting. Any other discussion that we need to go to? Anything that you can think of, Francisco or Griselda or anyone? Yes, Griselda.
Mr. Chair, sorry for this item. We should have covered it at the beginning of the meeting. For the frequency of the meeting, we the agreement of the committee is every week. One item we did not discuss is the duration of the meeting.
Wonderful, thank you. So it is currently 10:38, so we've been on this conference call for a little over an hour and 30 minutes or so, an hour and 40 minutes. I think anything over 2 hours gets tiring on a Zoom call. I don't know if anyone has any other kind of feelings on that, but I know I start checking out after 2 hours. Anyone else have a thought? Doug is shaking his head yes. Okay,
Mr.
so
Chair.
I think yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, Francisco Payares, for the record, we usually recommend this to stay within an hour and a half. I think an hour and a half allows for good discussion, but this is of course just the usual practice of how we conduct some of these meetings. But this is of course at your discretion.
I'm very, very good with an hour and a half. I think that is perfect. And we can just go from there from meeting to meeting and see as the discussion grows and as we keep going, since we are trying to work on something that is here and now and not planning for the long run, we're planning for the immediate future. So I think an hour and a half is great, and we can see how this goes for the next 2 meetings. So our next meeting would then be Thursday, June 18th. We will be meeting at 10 a.m. with a couple new board members. Anything else that anyone can think of for our first meeting? Sharon?
Before the next meeting, should we look at these 2 articles, the safe practice and the guidelines that we had links to in the email we received?
Yes, did everyone get those links to the safe guidelines?
I
Yes.
got it.
Okay. So let's definitely take a look at those, and then I'm going to circulate kind of what the Restaurant Association has been putting forth on safe practices too. I think it's a really good working document. So I'll forward that out to the group to do. And then I know Doug had a few things that he wanted to circulate as well. Debbie, if you have anything with the chamber, if you can definitely email that out to the group so we can get our hands on that and take a look as well. I think that's a really good starting point. Anyone else? Yes, Debbie.
Just to clarify, Jolene, you had sent a message regarding the zip codes, and I'll be glad to share with the group. I'm actually doing a Excel spreadsheet of all the zip codes in Diana County. And every time they send out new numbers, I go in and plug them in. So I'll be glad to share that. It's just something personal I've been doing just so I can monitor. So Jolene, I've been doing that for about 3 weeks now. It's very interesting to watch it. So I'll be happy to share that with the group.
Wonderful. Thank you, Debbie. I think that's wonderful. Francisco, can you think of anything else we need to talk on before we might adjourn?
I think that wraps up the session, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
This is Jolene Martinez. I motion to adjourn.
Wonderful.
Sharon Thomas, I second.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Jolene. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you on the 18th.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.